Hello everyone, welcome to Brenda's Brushstrokes and Bisque. Today we're painting our Monster Mania, which is our September Bisque box, and we're working on our werewolf. So I have our finished one and I have our other one that I just started base coating with my black, and I just brushed back and forth using our black, which is our Duncan OS567, and I have a size 8 round nylon brush. And you just brush back and forth and you brush out your paint until you have a nice smooth surface with no puddles and ridges, and you keep going back over it until you have no little white spots, little crevice, little size of the grain of salt areas that may be little white specks that still need paint. So that's what we're doing here with him at this point, just to speed this up a little bit. If you know about base coating, you can just fast forward through this. So for animals, I usually do use black or a black brown. You can use other colors. It all depends what you want your final piece to look like. Basically, your base coating color is the color that's left in your crevices for your shading. You could also color wash it, and that would be mixing your paint with 50% water and 50% paint, the 1-to-1 mixture, and then brushing it on and wiping it off with a wet sponge, leaving the color wash color down in the crevices. So I am seeing some little white specks here, and that's what I'm trying to get rid of with my dabbing around here, because those will show through when you're dry brushing, and it won't look very pretty. So we're just touching up our base coating here and making sure he's got a nice coat of black on him. And then I'll sit him down, and you also want to do your bottoms. You want your bottoms to look nice and finished as well. So we have a little speck over here. So lay him down. Then you also want to wash out your brushes really nice. I have a Harold's brush pad cleaner in here with some water, and I just brush back and forth and gently clean out my brush. And then I will dab it in my paper towel and then lay it aside and let it dry. So now I have white on my little thing from my fingers being up inside him. So he's drying here quick. So we will look at our instruction sheet. So we have number 1 was base coat black, which we have done. And number 2 is dry brush saddle brown onto his fur. So we are going to grab our saddle brown, which is our OS489, saddle brown OS489, which is our Duncan paint. And we'll give that a nice little shake. And I'll put a puddle on my foil. You can use your tile or your styrofoam plate. So he has pretty good size areas that we're going to dry brush, so we would not want to use a little bitty size 1 brush. We're going to go with about a size 5. So I'm going to, it's drying here just a little bit yet. I'm just going to dip the edge of my dry brush into my saddle brown. So this is a size 5 boar bristle brush, which is a natural hair brush. And they're a little bit stiffer compared to our nylon bristles, which are soft for painting. And so I've dipped that in there. I've brushed out the paint onto my paper towel, and you can see I can brush, and there's just a little bit on there. But now I want to brush across his fur, and you can see even though I basically brushed that paint out on my paper towel and it's coming up with nothing, when I brush back and forth across his fur, a lot of color is coming out, and that's what dry brushing is. So again, I'm going to grab my saddle brown, brush it out. I also want to paint the bottom. So we're going to dry brush across the bottom here. We want that to look finished just like the rest of it. And we're just going to brush this real quick, and you will build this up just like you do the sides. So we have a layer on there. Now we'll let that and go back to our side. We'll grab our saddle brown. So now I started at one area on the back, and I usually work clockwise around it. So we're just going to keep going. And I'm brushing across the texture of his fur to let the black down in the crevice. That gives us our shadowing on our piece, our shading. And we just come right around the front here. And this is actually probably a good little piece if it's your first dry brushing piece, because he does have a lot of fur, which has a lot of texture. You can see how that color goes on, even though that brush has been brushed out and nothing's hardly coming out on the paper towel. So we brushed back around now to the back. And so now we'll let that dry, and we'll come up to we'll start with his arm. And again, I'm going to brush right across it. I am leaving his little claws black. And then we're going to brush across the texture on his arm. And you do have to kind of change the direction of your brush because there's a curve to his arm. And you can see that goes on really quick, so this is really a good little piece to use. So I'm just going to come back to his foot because this one looks like it needs a little more on it. And then we can come back up to his arm. And then we'll go to his other arm. And we got to brush that out a little more because it looked a little wet. So I'm brushing right across his fur, right, and it's okay if you get it on his shirt. The shirt color will cover that up. And I brush right up to his little claws here and brush across them. So we're just going to brush right across our fur. So now we have both arms done. And you see I'm just working my way up. Now we're going to brush across his fur on his face. We're actually going to brush right across his fangs. We're not going to worry about those getting brown on them. We'll get that taken care of later. Same with his eyes. We're not going to worry about them. The nose, you can kind of avoid that. So I'm just giving him a nice shade of saddle brown. So the hair on his face kind of has this arch to it, and each one is going out. So I'm not going to go up and down or down. I'm going to kind of have a curve to it so that I'm going across the texture of that fur just like the curve that it has to it, because I don't want to fill in all the black by going with it. And we'll come right out to the edge here. And now his little ears, it's like coming out kind of an arch too, so we'll kind of have an arch to that. You just want to be mindful of the texture and brush across it. So now we'll just keep working around our way clockwise. Again, we'll just brush right on across it here. You can see now there's that little white dot down in there that I missed. So I'm going to have to grab one of my liners, go into my black, and touch that up because that's very obvious that that's there. And we have to touch it up where it's always going to be there. So I touch that up, and now we'll just keep going. Grabbing my saddle brown. Again, his little fur is kind of coming out. It's not all up or down or sideways. So you just have to change your direction here and kind of go with the arch of the fur. And just keep turning him around so you can keep going with that arch, so that you're going across that texture and getting it on the high parts of the fur and leaving the black down in the crevices for your shadows and your shading. And you can leave a lot of black or hardly any black. I mean, that's totally up to you. And again, we got to come around to his ears over here that are kind of out in the spiky area here. So we're just going to keep going across those and build that up. And we want to get the very sides as well. And we got to get the front of his little ears. And right across the top. Again, going across all that texture. So now his whole fur basically has one coat. And I would like him, there's still a lot of black coming through. I just want the black to be shading. So I'm just gonna come back at my bottom and start over and do a whole nother layer of my saddle brown, just like I did it the first time, and getting less black than there was. Get your bottom, build that up to the next layer, just like with the sides. And I'm just brushing back and forth because it's a smooth bottom. There's no true direction here of where the fur has its own direction, but we still want to build up that color on the bottom. So we'll get a little more here. And so again, I started at one point and I worked my way around and then I worked my way up. So you can have your own little system, but that's kind of my system. That way I know what has its coat. So if I went here and then here and here, then I'd have to come back and think, oh, I need to go over here, and well, did I do that? So if you just kind of have your own little system, like I start at one point and go clockwise, and then go to the next point and clockwise, and then to the next point. That way you know what has how many coats. So you might find that helpful. So another thing is, the reason I started with the fur is because the fur is actually the lowest level compared to the pants and the shirt. So if I would have done the pants first and then did the fur color would be on the pants. So now I can come back after the fur and do the pants with carefully not getting the pants colored onto the fur. So that's the reason, that's kind of how you pick where to start. At least that's how I pick where to start, is by looking at what is the lowest color, because that's kind of your first area to do. Because if you do your higher areas, when you come back and do those low areas, you're going to have that paint all over your high areas. So now I've actually worked my way back around. Now we can look and see that this has a lot more brown and less black. This is probably equal black and brown, so we want to just go up to our next area and get that to match the feet. So I'm just brushing back and forth here across my texture. Just work my way from one side to the other. And grab a little brown and brush it out. Go to the next arm and build him up to the color of the feet. Going across that texture. And I'm brushing real softly. I'm not beating the brush down into the piece. Just brushing right across it, letting a little bit of the black down in the crevice. Now we can see we have more brown than black on the arms and on the feet compared to the head. So now we want to work on the head. So now we go up to the head. Again, don't worry about those fangs. We'll get those white later. Don't worry too much about the nose. You can kind of go around the nose and the eyes, but if you get some on it, that's not a problem. We'll be touching that up later too. I'm just building up my brown here. And I'm started from the bottom, kind of went to the top, and now I'm working my way around. So I kind of have a system to it, I guess. Kind of really didn't realize that too much till you think about what you're doing and try to explain it to someone else to be of help to them. So I'm just brushing my saddle brown here, going across all those textures in that fur, and leaving the black down in the deeper spaces for its shading. And that just gives your piece, your color will have different color values to it that way. You'll have light and dark, medium, and light, which is what's on the color wheel, and that will give your piece lots of life compared to making it all dark or all medium or all light, where it would be boring and everything would kind of blend together. All the colors would blend together if they're all the same color value. If they were all light or if they were all dark. So we're just getting our little horn, his little, I want to call them horns always, but I think they're actually his little ears. Now we're coming back to the other one. And we'll come back to his little face here and get that a little lighter. So now I want to look at that and make sure I have the same amount of black showing through his head as I do on his arms and feet. Looks like I need a little bit more up here on his ears, so we're going to grab a little more saddle brown and make our way around one more time on that area. And I'm actually going to look at my feet, and they look good, the arms look good. I think it's really just his little face here that has so much texture that he needs a little more brown. We want that a little bit lighter, with just less darkness to it. And that just takes another track around. So that's our saddle brown that we're using. I'm just brushing back and forth across our texture. The brush is a little bit wetter than usual just because it's such deep, he's got such deep crevices on his texture, just so we can get that brown down in there. So I really don't want him to be a black werewolf. I want him to be more brown with the black for the shading. So we're just working our way back around. Always going across it. You could go with it if you wanted to help fill that black in a little more if you're not getting it as light as you'd like it. But generally I do try to go across it and not with it. Okay, so I did get his eyes covered up. That's all right, we're not going to worry about that. We'll get those when we paint him black. All right, so there he is with his saddle brown on him. I just want a little more on the tip of this foot here. Okay, so our next step is to use our goldenrod to highlight it. And let's see, I had goldenrod. What did I do with it? Okay, we have our goldenrod, Duncan Goldenrod OS567. We're going to give that a little shake and a little drop on our foil. And I'm going to use my same dirty brush so I have a nice gradual change of shades of color. Grab my goldenrod and then just brush back and forth and work it up in there. Brush it out good. And now we want to just highlight him. So I basically want it where the light would be hitting, which would be on the top of his toes, the top of his arms, kind of his face, the top of his ears. I'm not doing the whole every area of his fur, just where I wanted highlighted where the light would be hitting it. And that would be the top of the foot here. And we would want more at the top and less as it goes away. And the top of the arm and less as it goes away. And let's see, I like to do this other foot over here a little bit. And we'll just kind of bring it around here just a little bit. Get a little more on this one. And back onto this arm. And just on the top, where the light would be hitting as it goes away, you're going to have less, because less light would be underneath the dark part of that arm. Same with this one. Just lightly brushing that goldenrod on the high area with more on the highest part. And we're going to grab some more. A little bit on here yet. So you just want to think about where the light would be hitting it. And if you really have a problem with that, you can get yourself a flashlight, shut the ceiling light off, and then shine the light from above your piece and kind of in front of it. And that'll show you right where the light is hitting your piece, and that's where you would want your highlighting to be done. So we got these arms a little bit more. So now we want it on the tips of his ears, and then kind of round to highlight his face and his muzzle here. So we'll start with his little ears. Again, I'm just going across, kind of in an arcing motion, kind of just to go at the shape of those ears. And let's see, we want to go around his little eyes here and right across his nose, because if the light was shining, it would be hit right there and then kind of bounce off the sides there. And it would hit across the top of his head and on top of his little ears, and it would also hit right through here, so we want to get that, kind of that muzzle part. So you can see how you can give your piece lots of shape just by highlighting in certain areas. So as it went down underneath his chin here, there wouldn't be much, but because it is his face, we're going to get just a little bit around there. And we're going to grab a little more and brush it out. And then it would probably be going through the sides as well. It would hitting the sides pretty good here. And I don't do much in here because that's getting closer into the depth of the ear, and that would be darker in there. But yet around his face, that's higher again, so that would be getting more light. Grab our goldenrod and brush it out. And we'll turn to the back. So again, the light would be hitting it more on this outside edge and more through the center right here and here. And as you get away, because of the curve of the head, it would be getting darker. I'm just going right across the top, going across the texture, having it more heavier through here and then less, and then more again because this is kind of a high spot. And then you can go less as it goes out to the ears where it has more. And out to the sides here. So if he has this rounded head, this is going to be tucking down under it. So this is only going to have a little bit because there's more shading going on there. Less light would be hitting it, but more light is going to hit this high spot up here. So you just want to think about where the light is hitting your piece. So we have less down here, more up here. So we can come back around. We want to make sure we get the sides and the very top of his head, because that would be getting a lot more light. And kind of the top of those ears again. So we have a lot, and then less, and then more as we get to the center here, where the light would really be hitting it. And then less as it goes down. So we want to get the top, front there, the sides, his little muzzle, quite a bit on top here where the light would be hitting it pretty good, and then less as you go down underneath. Same with this side, more on that ear, more on the center, because that's rounded and that would just be getting more light. And then same with our little ears over here on the edge. So you have, it's a gradual change. There's more through here and then less as it gets into the depth of the ear. And then it gets more as it comes out where there's more light. So you just want to think about how the light's hitting it. And then quite a bit around his muzzle because the light would be hitting the top here really good. A little more on the top of those hands. A little more on the top of the foot. Same over here. And we're just going to look at him and make sure he looks nice and even and gradual. So that looks pretty good. We're good with that. So we're next on to our Lexington green for his pants. So I have my Doc Holliday DH26 Lexington green. We'll get a little pile of that. So now we just have a little bitty area, so we don't want to use a big old brush that's going to get paint everywhere. I have my size 3 that I'm going to use. I actually have the flat already have green in, so I'm just going to use that and brush that out. And get me some new paper towel. Brush it out again. So now I tend to start on these little edges here. So I do want to brush across them, but I'm brushing really gently just so I can get down to that peak and not get green all over my fur. And then I can kind of brush bigger strokes here as it gets up towards the where the shirt and the pants meet. But I'll work on these points first. And so I start away from the very point and then work towards it just in nice little strokes so I'm not getting my fur all full of green. And I can work right into the corner there. And now I can brush back and forth through the middle of his pants. I'm going across the crevice where the two pants legs meet. And now we'll just work our way around towards the back, starting away from your point, working towards it. And just keep going all the way around. Again, starting away from your point. And I do have my brush turned on its side instead of the wide way. You can kind of control where you can see where your paint is going. You have more control than going the whole width and getting paint everywheres, green paint everywheres. So I'm just got it turned on its side, starting away from the edge of my points and working down to them. I'm grabbing me some more green. Again, starting away from the point and work towards it, and that's a little wet, so we're going to brush that out. And kind of work down into your point next to your pumpkin. And get a little bit of green on the zigzag part, leaving some black between the fur and the pants. And now I can turn him around. And I could brush up and down across where the shirt and the pants meet, but I'm just going to save getting that green all over there. So I'm actually just going to brush back and forth with the edge of the brush, not the wide part. And just start away from it and nudge up to it and just leave a little bit of black there. That'll just save me time. Here I can turn it the wide way and brush across the center, leaving that black down in the crevice between the two pants legs. And I just start away from the bottom of the shirt and work up towards it, leaving my black and not filling it in right to the shirt. That way I still have my shading underneath there. And I don't have my green all over my shirt. And we're just working our way back around. And the pants themselves are pretty much covered with the green. There's not a whole lot of black showing through. The black is just basically down in the crevices where your shading is. I'm actually going to take my green and go over my pumpkin stem right away. And I just start away from my fur and work towards it, doing those little C strokes or maybe 1/8 inch ones, and I can start away and nudge right up to the fur, leaving that black indent or that crevice where the two meet, and not get that green all over my fur, so I have to redo my fur. And then I can turn my pumpkin, actually my whole piece, and just work my green down to my pumpkin, leaving that little black space where the pumpkin and the stem meet. So you have that black shading. You could brush back and forth across the whole thing, but it'll just save you a little work if you're just a little bit careful with your green when you put it on to start out with. And it still lets my black down in my crevices. And that just saves me from coming back and having to do the green again when I'm already in the green, so I'm just going to do the green stem long as I'm in it. Alrighty, so I can see some black through my green, so now that it's dry, and I'm just going to come back and brush it one more time. I do want to see the black between the pants legs and between the shirt and the pants. So there we go, we got our green on. So now we can go to our, let's see, where's my, we're going to put leaf green over the top for some highlighting. So I have our Doc Holliday leaf green DH31, and that usually needs a pretty good shake compared to some of the other colors. We'll get a little pile of that. And I'm going to use my same dirty brush with the Lexington green already in it. Dab into my leaf green a few times and work that color in there just to give us a gradual change of colors. And now I'm going to start from my points of my pants and work up towards the area where the pants and the shirt meet. But I want the most of my leaf green down on my zigzags so that it looks like that's very thin and worn material. It's all raggedy. And then I want it darker underneath here because the shirt is shading that. So I'm actually going to turn him around, and I'm going to again turn my brush on its side and gently brush my points and just build up that leaf green, having it stronger at the tips of the points and less as it fades away from them. And we'll have to do that a couple times. We'll just start at our points and work down. And once that's dry, we'll come back and do it again. So we have that nice gradual change of color. It looks like the pants are thin and it looks like the light is shining on them. So just gently brush so you don't get your green all over your brown. I'm brushing really lightly, grabbing my leaf green, brushing it out. I have my brush turned on its side. I start at the point of the zigzag and work into the pants. And just keep moving as I go from one to the next. And then I get to the little end piece here, and you got to be a little bit more careful. And now I can actually turn my brush on its wide part and brush it again. And now we'll come and give our pumpkin stem just a little bit of green highlighting, kind of going across the textures or the crevices in that pumpkin curly Q. Getting more of the leaf green at the top of the stem because that's where the light would be hitting it the most. And now we'll let that dry, grab some leaf green and brush it out. And now we can come back to the front here and we'll give our little points another coat. And just build that up a little bit more, just so it's a little bit brighter, so they look like they're just all frayed and thin on the ends. And you can bring that up as much as you want. Just have it thicker or heavier leaf green here and then less as it fades into the Lexington green. So it looks like the ends are frayed and thin, but then it gets back into the normal thickness of the pants. And just gently going on the tips of those zigzags there. Very, very gently and lightly touching them so that I'm not getting the leaf green all over. Taking it right down to the tips and then bringing it into the pants. And I'm just going to turn my brush the wide way and just bring it up a little bit further just so there's a little bit more shading and not a gradual or not a real stark line where the green, the Lexington green and the leaf green meet. Okay, so we got that. I want a little bit more on my pumpkin here now that that's dried right on top, because the light would be hitting it most at the top. Okay, and now we're going to go to our Mayco Limeburst SS376, our Mayco Limeburst. And we'll just need a little bit of that. And I'm going to use my same dirty brush, dip into my Limeburst and brush it out a couple times to work that color in there. And again, we're going to tip him on his end And we're basically just going to get the tips of our zigzags and just give them a little bit of highlighting, like the light is really hitting the tips of those and it's really worn out and thin. And then you can bring it down a little bit more if you want. So just working our way right around, starting at the tip and brushing down into the pants a little. So again, working across my tips and then less as I get into the pants. More on the tips of those zigzags and less as you get into the pants. And brush nice and light so you're not getting the green all over his fur. And now I can turn it on its side and just kind of just shade it out a little bit. So it's more of a gradual line burst and not a stark line. So we'll do that to the front. So just have a nice gradual color change there. And I think I want just a little more here in the corner on that first zigzag. Okay, and then I want just a little bit on the top of my pumpkin, like the sun is kissing it or the moonlight. The stem itself. So there, we got his little green all done already. So let's see, our directions next are number 7. Dry brush navy on the shirt, so we're going to go to our navy. So we have our Duncan OS567 navy. So shake that up, get us a little pile of that. Let's see, I have a kind of a medium-sized brush, a size 3, because we have little areas to get into. I wouldn't want to go with this big brush. I'd have navy all over my fur. So I'm just going to go with my size 3. I'm going to dip into my navy, brush it out. And now I want to start at one point to work my way around. So I'm going to brush across the texture. I wouldn't go up and down across his fur because then we'd have navy all over his fur. So I'm actually going to start away from it and then brush up to it with those little C strokes, and then I can see right where to stop, where the two meet, because I don't want that navy all over his fur. And I'll just work my way all the way around doing that. Here I can go back and forth across his sleeve, leaving that black down in there. But again, for his little fur on his face, I'm going to start away from it on the shirt and work up to it. And if you have a nice dry brush, you can just slowly build that up and see right where your paint is going on. So now we have where the little arm and the face meet. We don't have much room, but I can get in there with that little number 3, brush across, and then just slowly brush up to his little face. And now I can keep coming across his sleeve here. And we'll just keep turning him. So I have more room on his sleeve. I can make these bigger strokes and not getting the paint on his fur. I can come across the sleeve and where the sleeve meets the shirt. I have plenty of room there. I don't have to worry about the fur in the way. But as I get up to his head, I got to slow down and do these littler strokes so I can control where that paint is going. I can see right where it's going, so I'm not getting my blue all over his fur. And that's just by using those little strokes and watching where your color is going on. So we'll start away and just kind of work up to it. Again, I wouldn't want to go up and down here because then I'd have that blue all up in his fur and then we'd have to redo his fur, and we don't want to have to do that. So I just do these little strokes and nudge it closer and closer as I get to the fur. And you can see right where the paint is going on, and then you just stop and then pull away and start again. And just like that, we got his fur around the back. And we're almost back to the front, so I have plenty of room here on the tip of his sleeve, and now I got to slow down because I'm getting closer to the fur. And I just make these little bitty like 1/4 inch brush strokes, and you can see right where that paint is going, so you're not getting too much where you don't want it. So now we'll flip him around because we've come back around. So we'll start on this sleeve, and we want to nudge it down to the points on that shirt, covering up any brown that you got on there, and then bringing it right to the fur, leaving some of the black in the deeper parts. And you can see we got it right up to his fur. Same here with the arm. We don't want to go across it. We want to start away from it and just nudge that color right up to it real slow, and you can see right where your brush and your paint is going. We can do the same thing here, whereas little claws are. You could brush across them, but then you'd have to touch them up with the black, which is okay. We'll have to do that anyway. I just tend to try to keep it kind of neat. You can see where the black should be in the crevice there, and you just bring it right up to it. Now we're down to where the pants and the shirt meet, so we have to do those little strokes and bring the blue up to the green, leaving our little bit of black in the crevice. And that keeps all that blue off of that green, so we don't have to go back and try to get all that shading the same as what we had it with our different colors. So if you just use a small enough brush that you can see what paint is going where, and take your time, do little strokes, have good lighting, and just nudge it right up to the pants, leaving that little black crevice in there, because that's your shading. Again, I'm starting away and nudging it towards it. Because again, if I went across it, I would have my pants all full of blue, and we don't want to do that, because then you'd have to go back and try to redo them. So it's just little bitty, like 1/4 inch strokes that you're making, and you can just see where that blue is going, and you know right where to stop then. Like you can nudge it right down into that little crevice there where the two legs meet. And you got to hold on to it so you don't lose it. So I'm just nudging it right up to it. And we'll come right up to the pumpkin. And then work back the other way. And we have the bottom done. And we'll turn him a little bit, and we'll come around the pumpkin and the sleeve. Again, I got to start away from it and nudge up to it. I don't want to get my pumpkin all full of navy, and I don't want my arm all full of navy. So I just start away from it and nudge up to it. You can see right where your blue is going. And you want to leave that little bit of black down in there for your shading. So now I have this nice big area. I can come back here and do these nice big strokes. We do have to come back and do this other arm. So again, I'll start away and nudge up to it. And you just come right up to where the two meet, but you leave a little bit of black in there. That's just your shading, which makes your piece look more real, because really the arm would be shading the shirt, so you do want that black in there. We're just going to work right around here to the front of his shirt and his front claws. And we got to come right around to the top of his arm and get down in there a little bit. And we got to come across these peaks on this side of the shirt. And that's probably where you have to be the carefulest, is where those peaks are, so you're not getting that blue all over his fur. And you just those little strokes, just nudge it along there. You can see right where the wet paint is. And there we go. We got him all covered with blue, but I can see black through, so I just want to give him one little quick layer here yet. So you shouldn't be afraid of the little detailed pieces. It's just a matter of using the right size brushes, maybe taking your time with those little strokes to nudge that paint into those crevices. That way you don't have to go back and do a whole lot of touch-up. So just get the top of his sleeve here and come around. Just careful little strokes. Come around to the other sleeve. And bring it down to the bottom here. And we'll just come around again on the top of this rest of this sleeve. Okay, so we have our navy looking pretty good here. Looks like I need a little more along the bottom. But you can see I have this nice navy, and then it comes right to where the pants and the shirt meet, but I still have my little line of black, which is my shading that would be created where the two pieces of clothing meet. So it would be darker there because there'd be less light down there. Okay, same with the front here. Alrighty, so our next color is our bright blue. Bright blue is a new color this month. So we have OS567 bright blue. And again, that's a Duncan color, so we need a nice little puddle of that. Not too much though. I'm going to use my same navy brush, dip into my bright blue, brush it out on my paper towel. And we're going to do the same, basically the same thing. We do want it darker underneath where the shirt is underneath this edge because that light wouldn't be under there. So we want it nice and light along the edges, kind of on his belly here and on the top of his sleeves, kind of on the top of his back and along the edge. So that's where we'll just start back here by the pumpkin, and I'll just brush right along the edge. Take just a little bit of it underneath because it wouldn't be a sharp line. It would be a little bit of the brighter color going underneath there because a little bit of light would go underneath. And I'm just doing little strokes so I can see how much is going on, and I'm just keeping control of the paint and where it's going. So I have more blue right on the curve and then less as it goes, as it's folded under there, just so there's a nice gradual color change. So we'll come right around the front, grab a little blue, brush it out. I'm brushing really, really lightly on the piece. I'm not brushing hard with my brush. So we'll work just a little bit down onto the underside here, just because there would be a little bit of light under there, not as much all the way. So there's less and less as you get closer to the pants and more as you're right on that curve. So now we have that part done. Now we can flip him around. And now I want to probably put some right on the top of his sleeves and on his little fringes here, because those would be thin again and they would have more light coming through them because there's only one layer. And then you can have less of the bright blue as it gets away from them, but more right on the shoulder because the light would be hitting it pretty good on the shoulder, but more right on the points. And now we can do that on the other one. So again, more on your points. Just do little strokes so you know where your paint, you can see right where your paint's going and you're not getting it all over the fur. And then work it away from it. And then more right on the shoulders, and less as you get to the shirt and the sleeve, the shirt sleeve meeting the shirt because it would be darker again. And then same with the back, more right on the shoulder here because the light would be hitting it, the moonlight or whatever, the sun. And again, more on our points. And we'll grab a little bit of the bright blue again. So I want more right through the center because the center would be having more light hit it. And then we just want less as it gets to where the sides are, because that would have less light. And I'm just going to bring my bright blue up a little bit, and then I would have the navy and then his arm, and then actually the navy, the black, and then the arm, because that would be dark there again. But more right through the middle here, darker as it gets towards his little claws, because that would be shading that shirt there. But right through the middle we do want more. And then even here his beard is shading underneath all of that. Then we have our light, and then we have shading again because his little arm is right there. So we'll come around to the back. So now we would have light hitting the center of his back right through here. And then we would have less on each side, so now I'm going to brush even lighter onto those sides. But we still want that bright blue there just a little bit. And then it's darker as it gets next to the shirt sleeve, where the shirt and the sleeve meet. And the same thing on this side. So I still want that bright blue coming around, I just want less of it. And then I want more in the center. So we're going to put a little more in the center, just like the moonlight's really shining on him here. And get less as it's going towards the sides because it's curved and it's getting darker as it goes away. And then more right on the edge because the edge just always has more light on it. And you kind of want it even through the center. You don't want a lot here and less here. So I'm just building that up so it kind of matches more. Just more even looking. And getting more on the edge here. And more on the edge of the sleeves. And that's looking pretty good. Okay, so there we go. We got our shirt all done. I'm just going to bring it down a little bit more, all the way around. Just looks like it needs to come a little bit further. Okay, there, that looks good. So he's got his shading underneath his beard and around his arm and where his pants meet. So that's good. So now we're up to our pumpkin. We're going to get some rust. We're going to take our DH, which is Doc Holliday Rust 28, get a little bit of rust. I'm going to take my number 1 round brush because I don't have a big area there, dab it into my rust. And I'm going to brush back and forth across any textures. I'm going to be careful when I'm by the sleeves and the stem so I don't get rust all over them, and by the pants. And just get our rust on there. That's a good base coat for the orange and red as well. If you're using red at all, bring it right down to where the feet are. Just bring it right around to the back. I'm going across the little sections in the pumpkin, but I'm being careful where my pants and my shirt meet and where his fur is there. And where the stem is. And I just want to get a nice even coat of rust so my orange is a nice even color. Just bring it right up to the stem. And just brush back and forth across that texture, which really isn't texture, it's more of a crevice. That was a little wet, but we'll just brush it out and get it all nice and even. So I can see here I have my green stem. I got onto my pumpkin a little bit, so I'm going to bring my orange right up to that. So this little guy goes pretty quick, a lot quicker than the zombie and I think the vampire. Those two took longer. So we have that nice and rusted up here. Looks like we need a little more back here. I got a lot of black showing through yet. So let's bring it back around. So we have an even coat on the front and the back and up and down. Just do little strokes by the stem so you don't get the rust all over the stem. Okay, so our next number on number 8 is our hot orange. So we're going to shake up our hot orange, which is Duncan OS567. Oh, that's orange peel. Wrong one. Let's go back to hot orange, OS569, hot orange. And we'll get a little drop of that. And we'll use our same rust colored brush for a nice gradual change of color. Work it in there and brush it out. We'll start on the back side because that's drier. It's where we started. And we're just going to brush across our texture here, bring it right up to the stem. And then right down to the fur. And again, we're just using orange peel on top of our rust and going across our little textures, which is the crevices or the little sections of the pumpkin. You can go right across the fangs, don't worry about that. We'll be painting those white later. So get a little more rust on there, or not rust, hot orange. Bring it right up to the shirt and the pants. Just take your time and do little strokes. Just work it in there. This is a little area, so it probably doesn't have quite as much time to dry in between, so we might actually go on to the next step and let this dry and come back and touch it up some more. So it's better if it can dry. So we're going to dry brush black on the claws and let our pumpkin dry. So I need a little bit of black, which is our DH. Actually, it's not DH, it's Duncan OS567 black. And I'm just going to take a little dry brush. I have a flat ROM number 1 here. And I got enough black here for a week. So I just want to dry brush on my little black, his claws here, because I do have some brown on it. Just get them nice and black all the way up to the top again. And then we can dry brush on the black onto his little nose. Or you can paint it. I'm just going to dry brush it. As long as it's in that brush anyway. And we'll do the same with the eyes. You can paint them or dry brush them. I'm just going to dry brush them with the black. As long as it's in the brush here. And I'm just working it around the nose and the eyes. But you could paint them if you wanted. Kind of gives it a little bit of softer look on the edges if you dry brush it instead of painting it. Okay, let's see, what else do we have? We'll put that aside, and we can come back to our pumpkin now. He's a little bit drier. We'll go back to our hot orange, and we'll just brush a little bit more on there, get him a little bit more colorful. So just leaving that dry that few minutes, that it's taking the paint better now. So when you have such a little area, you can't like work your way around and come back and then it's dry. You actually have to kind of move on to another area And then you can come back and do it. So let's get our hot orange on here and get us a nice bright pumpkin. Bring it right up to our little stem. Just be careful, same with by the arms and the feet on the bottom. Okay, so we have that on there. And now we can go to our orange peel just to highlight it a little bit. But I think we're going to let that dry. So I'm going to go to his little eyes and we're going to get some white. So I have our Duncan OS567 white. So I'm going to let our pumpkin dry before we highlight him. And I'm going to take a drop of white, and I got way too much again. So I need my liner brush. I have my nylon 595 5-over liner, which was in your July box as your anniversary gift. You can also order them from us at brendasbrushstrokesandbisque.com. So I just put a drop of water on my brush and worked it into my white just to thin it out a little bit. So I'm going to do the typical eye on this guy, and you can refer to the eye instructions you got last month. I'm going to put white from 11 o'clock to about 1 o'clock, leaving a black outline. It's also on our piggy bank pig video, step by step doing the eyes. So you do want to hold your piece steady on the table, and then you want to rest your hand on your piece so you have nice control of your brush. And I'm just going to bring my white from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock. I'm worried about the outside line that meets the black. That's what I'm focusing on, not the center part, because that will be covered up with the blue and the black later. It's just this white part and where the white and the black meet that we're focused on. So I have one done, and now we'll go to the other one and do the same thing from 11 o'clock to about 1 o'clock. I start in the eye and merge out to the line where the black is. And again, you can refer to your instructions from last month's box or to the piggy bank eye video. So we're just making our little whites of our eyes. And I'll come back and touch up the white on the first one so it's a little heavier and not seeing through it. And let's get a little more white in there. And then come back and do the other one. And we'll let that dry. Wash out our brush. We'll go to our orange peel, let our eyes dry. So I have orange peel, OS568. And I'll just take a drop of that to highlight it. Dip my hot orange brush into that and brush it out. And just work it in there and get a nice highlight color. And now you just want to do the center of each little section of the pumpkin to kind of highlight it, like the light is hitting that, and then on the face. And it just gives it a nice bright pumpkin look or color. So we'll come around to the back and do the back panel. So it's just right through the center of each of those pumpkin sections because they're curved, and because they're curved, they're lighter in the middle and then darker on the outside, or the high center part of it. Bring it right up to the top there. And then come back around and get his face a little bit more through the center. Right up to the stem. Okay, we'll put that aside and we'll go back and get our eyes. We're going to go to our medium blue. So I have our Duncan OS567 medium blue, and we just need a little drop of that. And I'll dip my brush in the water and put a drop of water in there and mix that up so it's like ink. If you're mixing a large amount of paint, you want to use a palette knife or the end of your brush if it has the slanted edge, but this little bit I do use my liner brush. So I have my 5-0 liner, and I'm going to do my blue to make my white look like a crescent. So it's easier not to talk when I'm actually painting those, so we'll just make our crescent here. And so I'm only worried about where the blue is meeting the white. I'm not worried about the where the blue is meeting the black. And I'm going from about 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And again, I don't worry about the black part. We're only worried about where the white and the blue meet. And you want one eye to look the same as the other eye, meaning the same amount of blue and the same amount of white. So now I have the right one has a little more blue than the left one, so we're just going to give a little more blue to our left one. And it looks like the inside, this one is down further than this one, so we're going to bring the other one down a little further. So they match. And I can wash my brush out. I can dip into my black. And while that's drying, we will paint in our pumpkin eyes with the black. I'm resting my hand on the table holding my piece, and I'm resting my painting hand onto my piece so it's nice and steady. And that way you can get fairly straight lines. That helps. So now my blue is dry in one eye here. So now we're going to make a crescent shaped with the blue using the black from about 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. We are just going to worry about where the blue and the black are meeting. We'll worry about the inside once we get that lined up. So this is again the same eye that's on our piggy bank video. That's our eye video because it was just a nice big eye to be able to use to do that. And there are other eyes. This is just kind of a simple one. So we're just making a blue crescent just like we did with the white, going from about 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And you want to leave the same amount of blue and white in each eye, which I just took away most of his blue. So I think we'll leave that and put some blue back. So we'll let that dry. I'm going to wash out my brush. I'm going to go back to my pumpkin and put a little white around the center. Kind of make him look kind of googly-eyed. So I'm just going to give it a black outline. And then kind of a black googly center. So you can do your eyes any way you want on these pumpkins. I want them to look kind of goofy, which it looks to me like they look pretty goofy. Kind of cross-eyed, I guess you could say they look. So one's bigger than the other, so we got to make the other one a little smaller. She could have painted the whole circle white and then just added a black dot. That might be easier. But there he is, looking all googly-eyed. So there's our white. So now we're going to go back to our blue and see if we can give this guy a little bit more blue in his one eye, because I took too much away. And we won't worry about how much blue we get in the black, because we'll touch it up with the black again. There we got our blue in there. We'll give the other eye his white. So I just took my brush and dipped it in the water and thinned out a little bit of white here. And then I can give him a little comma, heavier on the top, lighter on the bottom. And if you want, you can even put a little X on the other side. Dip your brush in the white and give it a little dot at the top and at the top of the X. And we'll wash out my brush. And I think I'm actually going to dip the end of my brush into the black and give this more of a round black center, because it looks kind of, we're not looking even. So now we have two little eyes that look a little more even there. And we're waiting for our blue to dry. Okay, we're gonna see if we can fix this guy up over here. So the two eyes match. Since I got rid of all his blue before. And it's a little wet yet. So we'll have more of the 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock going on. You could use a hairdryer if you wanted to dry an area quicker. So there we go, we got the black done, and we just need it to dry. Oh, we got to do his fangs. So I washed out my brush, and I'm going to go into the white, let the eye dry there, and we're just going to paint the fangs on our werewolf and on our pumpkin, and then we're just about done. Make sure you don't get your fingers into your eyes so they smear wet paint all over. Again, I'm resting my piece on my hand that's on the table, and I'm resting my painting hand on my piece so I can get nice straight lines for those little fangs. And now we'll get our pumpkin fangs. So there he goes. I'm gonna wash up my brush. Actually, I could have kept it in there because we're gonna do the white next. So now we'll do our little comma in his eye. Bigger at the top, lighter at the bottom. Kind of want them to match both eyes. You can do the little X over in the corner or not. Put a little dot at the top of the comma. Do them both at 1 o'clock or both at 11 o'clock. Don't do one at 11 and one at 1 because they'll look cross-eyed. And one little at the top of the X. Go back and touch up the fangs if they need more white. And the pumpkin fangs. So at this point he would be left to dry for a few minutes. I would seal him with a matte sealer. And then I would take my gloss sealer that's in part of your Bisque box. Just open that up. It is in, so this is a brush-on gloss sealer. Take your little, after he's dried from sealing him with your aerosol sealer, which I use matte, dip your little brush into the gloss sealer, and I would paint that on each eye. And it will go on white, but it will dry clear. And it'll give it a nice shiny look, like he has really white, wet looking eyes, just like animals do have wet looking eyes, just like we do. I'd also put it on his little his little claws. When I have pointy claws, or even the fangs, I like to start at the point end and then draw it towards me. So we'll do each little claw here. And this does dry clear. So this will give these claws a nice little shiny, wicked look to them. You could even put like glitter on if you wanted. I suppose that might be cute. And then I come from the top down and join them up. And you could do 2 coats. Sometimes it needs 2 coats just to get more of a wet look to it. And we'll turn this one. Again, I like to start at the points and pull it towards me. And I'm resting this 4th finger right on my piece so I can control where that brush is going. And then I will turn it and go the other way to meet up the point. And you can see it's drying already. It dries fairly quick. And then we'll put it on, let's see, we'll do our pumpkin fangs. Just make them look really fierce and shiny and wet, and they're gonna get you. And on the pumpkin eyes, I'll make them wet and shiny. And on our fangs, on our wolf here, so they look fierce. So you can save your brush on gloss sealer. There'll be plenty in your little container. You can use it for other stuff. And now we'll get his other eye because paint should be dry now. So you do want to have nice straight lines because wherever it dries it's going to be shiny, and so if you have a zigzaggy line you're going to see zigzaggy shiny. So you still want to take your time and paint this on real carefully. And if you wanted, you could even give him a little wet nose. So I didn't do that with the sample, but actually I think I did. Just paint it on his nose and give him a wet nose too. And then if you want, once it's dry, like in, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, you can come back and give it a second coat. And that'll just give it more shine even than just one coat. But you do want to make sure you have nice straight lines and they're where they need to be. Because if you go out of the line, it's going to be shiny wherever you go. So there we go. We have our painted little eyes. Now that's everything's white, but you can see it is drying. I'm going to make sure you wash out your brush really good with that sealer in there. So this is our finished piece and our piece that's drying yet, but you can see the little fangs are shiny and the little mouth is shiny and his nose and eyes are shiny. So this one's a little darker. It would just need a little more of the bright blue on it, and then actually I put some baby blue on there. I just seen that on the instructions. So you could add some baby blue on there to get him lighter too. And the baby blue was the OS456. I don't want to do that now because I have my sealer on there. But you would just have to highlight it a little more, just like we did with the bright blue with the baby blue. So there you go. There's your werewolf for your September Monster Mania box. Thank you.